Without question, one of the coolest things in Star Citizen is the spaceships. Many games have spaceships, but almost none of them build them out with the details, functionality, and unique purposes in the way that Star Citizen does. They're certainly one of my favorite aspects of the game. However, despite there being well over 100 ships in Star Citizen, the final vision for how these spaceships is going to work isn't even close to being fully realized, and based on what was mentioned in the recent CitizenCon and even prior dev statements, the amount of reworks, overhauls, rebalances, new features, and tweaks that will be needed to get these ships into a more finalized state seems like a truly astronomical amount of work. I am both incredibly excited by all the new features and cool stuff that we're going to see, and a bit terrified by just how long it might actually take. But I really wanted to delve into the amount of work that's required and also get your take on it. So I've put together a summary of what's actually planned for the future of spaceships in Star Citizen. Let's get right into it with one of the biggest ship updates, which is engineering gameplay. This feature is planned for pretty much every ship in the verse, perhaps less intricate for the smaller ships, but nonetheless, each ship will be updated with internal system connections, power relays, and engineering maintenance and repair gameplay. This is a massive undertaking and seems like it'll be in testing for a long time and will likely bring its own set of balance challenges, as it'll also need to integrate with NPC crew members down the road. This will be tested in Arena Commander first in a limited capacity, but rolling it out to all the ships seems like a huge undertaking. Now, another major change that will affect pretty much all ships is called Master Modes. This is the new system for ship combat and flight, where pilots can switch between an SCM combat mode and a faster travel quantum mode with trade-offs and benefits for using either. This update will bring changes to speeds and rotation mechanics on all of the ships, their shield access, quantum travel mechanics, and how their weapons aim. This will have to be fine-tuned and tweaked for every single ship in the game. In addition to this, there's also new zoom mechanics coming to each ship and targeting features, along with rate of fire tweaks. There's also going to be a new realistic flight mode coming for atmospheric flight that will let ships with wings fly more like aircraft. Each ship will need its flight mechanics individually tweaked and weapons balanced. Now, they also mentioned adding more weapon variety to spaceships, like burst fire weapons, and adjusting the values of all the current weapons, which will need a lot of testing, of course. Every single ship in the game is also getting new dynamic destruction trees as part of the Maelstrom system. This will result in more realistic component and system failures, which again will likely lead to tons of more balanced testing. Any ship that has, say, a lot of components connected to a weak link could see massive failures when hit in vulnerable areas. Now, a complete ship user interface overhaul is also in the works, which will change both your helmet heads-up display and your ship's multi-function displays. Previously used MFDs will look totally different and probably function in vastly different ways. Also, different manufacturers will have unique styles of HUDs as well. A very cool and needed update for the game, but daunting considering how many ships and unique MFD functions are needed. I think there's basically 17-ish different ship manufacturers in the game, each with their own MFD styles and potentially more on the way, so the UI work needed here sounds kind of insane. Plus, all the MFDs and cockpit functionality will come with custom button pressing animations for pretty much every single feature that needs to be turned on or off. Ships are also getting new travel mechanics like Quantum Boost, allowing them to travel short distances, like from a planet to its moons, at extreme speeds. This is going to fundamentally change traversal in the game. And while I'm really looking forward to this feature, again, a complete change to a fundamental system like this usually means unforeseen bugs and exploits that will need to be dealt with. Now, missiles and torpedoes, primary weapon groups for this game, are supposedly getting some big reworks at some point, though we don't have too many details on when or what's changing. But again, it's bound to be a system that will require a lot of testing to get right, since missiles will be a main function of combat. NPC crew members have been a hot topic for a long time. Star Citizen will eventually allow you to hire NPC crew that can maintain and operate ship stations on your spaceship, which will include things like being a co-pilot, operating turrets, and even doing engineering gameplay. This will likely change the use cases for large ships in major ways, and we haven't even really begun to see how this is going to work or the bugs and balance issues that will come from AI pathing within your ship while it's in flight and in combat, and the overall responsiveness from NPCs as well. This feature is almost certainly reliant on functioning server meshing tech, but it still may constitute a major gameplay shift once deployed. Similarly, blade tech has been a long-promised feature where blades are essentially AI computers in your ship that can operate different systems, including turrets. This again will drastically change your ship meta, the loadouts, and the single-seat operational capabilities of a lot of craft. Tractor beams are currently being added to the game right now, and while they are very cool, they're already showing significant problems with ship design and loading and unloading functionality. Older ships like the Caterpillar have limited functionality with their beam placement and may need reworks to become more usable, and even the newer ships like the Spirit are quite awkward with their beam placement that makes loading and unloading just a janky process. It's likely this system and many other systems will need lots more tweaking and reworks and updates to get them to feel like a good gameplay feature. Now, the star map, which was demoed at CitizenCon, will need integration with all of the ship's holo viewers for navigational purposes. This could be on small single-seat ships that have holo navigation at the front, or even massive ships that have these standalone holo maps. New ship components are going to need to be developed. We're already seeing empty component bays for things like gravity generators appearing on ships. Spaceship modularity, which has been promised from the early days of Star Citizen, will also need to be figured out. Likely they'll have to solve it when the upcoming Galaxy is released, but I wonder if they'll also add it retroactively to the other ships in the game that were advertised as having more modularity. Players are also expecting more VTOL refinement and better reasons to have VTOL modes on the existing ships. Night vision for piloting on ships on the dark side of planets has also been requested for a long time and has been confirmed that there is some sort of solution in the works, but we just don't really know when that's coming. Another highly requested feature is some sort of spaceship landing solution where players can land from the first person using some sort of built-in camera system. Currently, CIG is making multiple adjustments to ship masses, which will basically directly impact the flight mechanics, but it's also likely related to the plans for balancing them to carry cargo that will have weights and different component weights to affect the ship's flight performance. Again, this will probably need lots of testing across many different ships. Now, what I just mentioned are features that will affect most of the ships or all of the ships in the game. But what about all the work that needs to be done for very specific ships? Firstly, we have general ship reworks for ships like the Freelancer, Constellation, Blade, Scythe, Glaive, and Caterpillar needing probably significant changes to meet the current gameplay standards, with the 600i already in the midst of a complete rework. And I'm sure there's probably other ships that are in need of a bit more TLC. Now, secondly, there's of course the building and finalization of the big capital class ships, many of which have been promised for years and have yet to make it into players' hands. These take massive amounts of time and dev work just to complete a single ship. The Idris, Javelin, Bengal Carrier, Banu Merchantman, Kraken, Pioneer, Endeavor, Orion, Whole E, and honestly quite a few more will each take what I would imagine to be at least a year, if not longer, to finalize their designs. Although the Idris does sound like it's already being prepped for release alongside Squadron 42. This is also not taking into account the many Vanduul capital ships that will likely need some updating before being ported from Squadron 42 into the persistent universe. I'm very excited about these ships, and I have no idea how far along they are in terms of what their internal details are or what they would need to actually be playable or invadable ships in the PU. Now, aside from ship reworks and finishing off capital ships that have been around forever, there's also ships whose main purposes just aren't yet built into the verse. Scanning is a major feature that was talked about at CitizenCon, and it's getting overhauled functionality for both the basic ping scanning and also increased functionality for ships with higher powered scanners like the Drake Cutter Scout and the Terrapin, which has been in the game forever with no scanning functionality. The MSR and Herald, whose main purposes are data running, will also need completely new functionality regarding what is data running and the features and gameplay loops surrounding this mechanic. The Reclaimer and Vulture will also need whole salvaging functionality, which is currently in the works. All of the ships in the game that are designed as primarily hauling ships will need hauling missions and better loading and unloading functionality for those missions versus some of the placeholder mechanics that we have with like the Whole Sea right now. The bounty hunting ships like the Cutlass Blue have vertical stasis pods for taking in bounties, but those pods look a bit different than what was demoed recently, so bounty specific ships will likely need some reworks in this regard. And we already got a little bit of a taste of the Anvil Hawk rework, showing it grabbing a stasis pod with the rear module. Passenger transportation ships like the 890 Jump, Constellation Phoenix, upcoming Spear E1, and Genesis Starliner will also need missions and gameplay loops for this type of gameplay. Then there are of course many upcoming ships that will need brand new functionality and new gameplay systems. The Spartan boarding ship will need new ship-to-ship docking capabilities. Ship-to-ship docking will also probably require some updates and reworks to many ships in the game that have docking collars. The upcoming Apollo medevac ship is advertised as having drone tech, and so were some of the mining and salvage ships as well. We haven't really heard much about drones, so it's hard to know just how far along that tech is, but it could be a pretty important feature and change up a lot of things. Then of course there's base building ships, which is a whole can of worms in itself. There's large scale mining ships, which will need new mining functionality. Science ships, which have really not been explained much at all in terms of how they're supposed to work. Mine laying ships, fleet rearming ships, repair ships. The Reliant Mako is a reporting ship, which seems like sort of a weird niche, and who knows if there's going to be an actual gameplay loop for that. And honestly, probably a bunch more stuff that I'm forgetting. And I hope you guys will excuse me for a second while I catch my breath. But hopefully this helps to illustrate the situation for the future of starships in Star Citizen. Now, don't get me wrong, I am extremely excited to watch them bring any of these features into the game. It's going to add new gameplay mechanics, new functionality, new exciting things to do, but the wealth of work needed to get these ships, and just ships, not any of the other gameplay functions, into a more finalized vision for Star Citizen is kind of insane. Obviously, these features are going to roll out in many different waves over the course of, well, probably many years. And I would hope that the more core mechanics will be prioritized over the more nuanced systems, but it does make sense why CIG is a company of 1,300 people, all working toward different aspects of the game at once. What do you guys think about Star Citizen's lofty spaceship ambitions? They've come a long way already with many impressive ships and functionality, but the road ahead is still extremely long. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop me a like, hit that sub button, and turn on that bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. And next up, check out this summary video of CitizenCon that breaks 12 hours of content down into about 25 minutes. As always guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.